perhaps we can talk to Simon in the UK, who says there may be a God after all. Simon, what's made you think that?
Well, for the last 45 years of my life, I've been concerned with the problem of evil. It's everywhere. It never stops. There's never been a day of peace in my life that I know of. And the other week, it occurred to me that the God may be an evil created God, which fits if you think about an evil created God actually creating the good God for people to believe in, and all the turmoil about us saying, no, there isn't a God, and they're saying, yes, there is a God. Well, it all fits. Everything that happens could come from
I hear you. I think like it is totally possible that if there is a God, then it could be evil or whatever. It could have no sense of morals or anything. So that, I mean, that's true, and we could perhaps discuss that. But I would like to address the kind of idea like, oh, it fits. I think that doesn't necessarily, that's not like strong evidence for there being a God, because the kind of, oh, it kind of just makes sense. Like we could say the same for if, like my classic example is if there was just like a space wizard that created the universe or something, maybe that's evil, and that also just kind of fits, doesn't it? So maybe there's more than one option here, and a God isn't necessarily the only possibility.
Well, I think probably life is random, although I force myself to believe that, really, because I've got no proof that it is random. And so the opposite of that is that there is a mind that creates every piece of confusion and evil in order to sort of create a hell for all of us who loathe violence and killing and murders and rapes and all those sort of things. It does seem to fit.
Well, can I
guess
the sole purpose of an evil God was to create chaos, and surely you would think, well, that's a hypothesis that's worth considering.
Maybe, but then it could have done a lot better job. Like there are some things that are good, or people can be happy and stuff, and like it's not like the most evil thing you could possibly imagine. So I don't know. I feel like if it's an evil God, it's not very creative. I mean, it's pretty creative. It's come up with some absolutely fucking horrific stuff. Like whatever God, even if this God is apparently good, it's designed all kinds of absolutely, and again, unimaginably abhorrent stuff. But it could have been more evil.
Yeah, and there's actually something, Simon, I want to address, because it seems like you're weaving into two things that for me are a little strange. Because the note is that you say that there may be a God after all, and then you cited the problem of evil, presumably the logical problem of evil. That if there's an all good God and an all powerful God, it ought to create a world where it maximizes the good, which would be no evil, and it would have the ability to do it because it's all powerful. And once you say it could be evil, then all it's really said is that sure, the problem of evil doesn't apply to the God that's not all good, right? It's only going to affect that. But the purpose of the argument, at least from the logical problem of evil, the purpose of it is to derive some contradiction, right? But when you say there could be a God after all, I don't know that, like, unless like the atheist or somebody goes, well, I think God in general is a logical contradiction, right? Now you're talking about like just any kind of idea that you could define into existence. That's fine. Like we can do that all the time. But the prior problem was one of a logical issue, right? One that derives some contradiction. Whereas this problem is just more of like you conceiving after the fact what could fit. But I don't know that like that anyone's going to say God is inherently some contradiction. So you could do that move as much as you want, right? But I don't, kind of like what Katie's saying, I don't know how that actually substantiates the claim in any way. Right. We can all imagine things. We know we can do that, but that doesn't, just because I can imagine something doesn't mean it has any good reason to believe that it's true.
Well, what I did was I actually took my cue from the Christian view of the devil. And I'm not up on Christianity much myself, I have to say, but they do say the devil is a cunning being, right? And
Right.
hello, you got,
Yeah, you're still
right.
here. Go ahead.
And the devil is very cunning. Well, if the devil doesn't have to be, the devil could be as subtle as he wants, presumably, to keep the whole of humanity in a state of unrest because of the problem
Yeah.
of evil.
I mean, could do, but like, I mean, we could. I think what like Mike was trying to say was, we could imagine all kinds of possible, like maybe it's like the devil, or maybe there's like 6 different evil things which all have 1/6 of evil each, and they all like to insert it in their own way sneakily, and or maybe it's like some kind of magical Darth Vader kind of type who just wants to rule the galaxy, and he's I don't know, like there could be loads of different things, any kind of thing that fits in, but that doesn't really, there's no like that doesn't mean anything really,
Yeah,
there's like an unlimited amount of possibilities here.
Yeah, it's kind of a trivial point in the sense of that, like, if the whole idea behind the first one that you're like, well, hey, around this logical problem is to just not have the derived contradiction, right? But I don't like it seems weird to me because you saying it's possible that it could be this, it's like, sure, there's in that hypothetical, there's no contradiction we're deriving, which isn't the same thing as prior when that argument's depending if you're looking at evidential or the logical problem. The logical problem is going to be deriving some type of contradiction. So sure, if you're just saying God could exist absent these properties that contradict each other, sure. Like, a circle that's defined not to be squared could exist because it's no longer a contradiction to what we define, the terms to mean. So it seems that you could do that with anything. Like there could be anything after all, right? When you at least the reasoning I'm hearing, we could just apply this with anything because it just comes down to what we could imagine. As long as there's not 2 properties that contradict each other, it seems to be trivial to me, at least.
Well, the thing is, the pinnacle of what I'm saying is evil, right? Now, if you say it could be any other thing might not be evil at all. It might be benevolent, right?
But you're trying to explain evil, aren't you? So whatever we pick to explain evil, I mean, we could invent, if we're not trying to explain evil, then we can invent any possibility for anything. But like if we're trying to explain why, I guess when you're saying the problem of evil, you're saying the fact why don't we live in like, why does evil exist, rather than maybe this comment about pointing out a contradiction.
Well,
Sorry?
I was about to ask you why do you think evil exists? The only other thing I can think of is that we are still animals and we behave with animal nature.
Yeah, that's going to be a separate question, right? In terms of like why. So there's going to be a lot there. There's going to be what we determine to be evil versus someone else's.
Yeah, that's the first thing. Like, can evil exist? Like, what does evil mean if there aren't people around to, understand what evil is? Because there are loads of things that like you say, animals do, and if humans were to do them to each other, we'd think it was evil, but animals just do it all the time, and they obviously don't think it's evil, or at least the ones doing it, like praying mantis eating some bee, like eating a head alive or something. So that would be horrible if humans were to do that to each other. You'd think, God, that's evil, but it's just like normal for them. So without us to understand what evil means, what, like, does it have a meaning at all? Anyway, if there was no life in the universe, and there's no life there to understand what like morals are, and then Mike says the second way, if we pick something, if we say, okay, then like rape is evil, we could say, well, where does rape come from? And then we could like look at evolution and understand it, but that's kind of separate from saying where does evil come from, because I don't think I mean, we're not necessarily, like, I don't know, maybe you're making the claim that evil is something that exists regardless of humans, like it's its own entity. Evil is
Yeah.
like a thing,
Yeah.
rather than what we're really doing is we're looking at some action and we're saying this is so bad that we're going to call it a word worse than bad.
Yeah, and real fast, if I could tack on, is that
Yeah,
because I agree with Katy
Yeah.
100%. My kind of
I-
idea is that this is like a higher order of how we look at. So other animals, for example, like they don't have the ability to like analyze, if we call it a desire, right? To have like, I have a desire, and then I could like have this second level of like, what is my desire? Why do I desire that? Right? We have this like ability to kind of have this retrospect,
And it's horrible.
and it is. But if you look at like, I was watching this video with this alligator trainer, and he said, you know, look, if I had a seizure right now, or this branch came and hit me on the head, and I fell out, even though I've worked with this, you know, alligator for 13 plus years, it's just gonna eat me right away. There's no second level like order of affairs there, and they'll do that with someone they've mated with for forever, right? This is it's there's the level of evil comes from a gradient of perspective, right? And so to say that it's instantiated by some feature of the world, to me, seems to be wrong, as opposed to it's instantiated by some feature of our perception and our ability to like look at the world outside of just kind of the one-dimensional track of us doing it, but us also being able to like zoom out and look at that. So that would be my perspective on where evil.
And maybe another way. Sorry, go ahead, Simon.
But I just want to say that in the case of the alligator that turns and eats and destroys the keeper, right? Then the families of that keeper are going to be very upset about it, right? And this is what I'm saying, that this is how... Mike, are you talking? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yes, I'm saying take the incident of the crocodile killing, right? Now, that's caused an awful lot of sadness to the family, the children of that man or woman, okay? And I'm saying, yes, it's like that. It's at that level, you know? It's in the fabric of everything we do. Hello, what's that? It's in the fabric of everything we do. That's what I'm saying. It's all encompassing. And it goes right down to the level of, say, a preacher stealing money from his church, something like that. That upsets a huge amount of their parishioners.
Right. But like what?
Or the Pope saying that it's immoral to have abortions. That causes an immense amount of pain to human beings. Right?
Right.
You see what I mean?
I guess what me...
everywhere.
I hear you, Simon. I hear what you're saying. There are some things which, you know, cause pain to people or whatever. I think the point that me and Mike were trying to say was that you know, this is causing pain to people because we understand, you know, we have some idea of what causes us pain, or things do cause us pain. When a loved one of yours dies, it's like a natural human response to be sad. That's like something we do and we've evolved to do. But if we had evolved differently, or we look at other animals, you know, there are some animals where that isn't the case. You know, there are some like some crabs will lay their eggs and the babies come out and they just eat them because they have no connection to any other animals at all. They're just, you know, they just exist. And they just haven't developed this kind of social understanding that we have. So what we're saying is that humans are the ones that kind of understand actions to happen to be evil. And if we were different, we might not understand. We might not have that kind of understanding. So, like, what I'm saying is, if a crocodile eats a human, we could say, God, the world is so cruel. It's so evil. Why did God create it this way? But if we were like some weird crab monster that have evolved instead, then we might just be like, oh well, yeah, you know, who cares? Like, I eat my own kids all the time. I'll just eat other animals. That's just what we do. I don't think that's sad. I don't have any concept of sad when someone I know dies. So what we're saying here is it's subjective in that it's subjective kind of in two ways. One, we don't all agree on what is evil and what isn't evil, but also in the fact that we need an understanding of what is going on in order to even class it as evil in the first place.
Well,
do you see what that?
My hypothesis comes directly from the hypothesis of a good God. It is saying that a good God it need not necessarily exist, because an evil God has created the good God, and he's created all the destructive things we see in wildlife and things like that, because it will disturb someone seeing a lion coming along and killing the cubs of another lioness, for instance.
Simon,
You know?
Simon, let me ask you a question, because we're gonna kind of keep going back in this loop for a while. I feel like, so I want to kind of divert a path that I feel like might be more productive. Apart from the fact that you've imagined this, what actual evidence or reasons do you have that would make me or somebody else believe that that is true? Because if you're telling me just from you, that's no different than if I went to the bar and had a beer and some guy told me the earth was flat. They're both they're on the same level of evidence, right? Which is none. So what could you offer apart from the imagination that would make me confident in believing it?
I would say that in every human life, you're going to have something that's going to be upsetting. Doesn't matter who you are, what country you live in, it's always going to happen, right? No one ever lives a life without ups and downs, right? And not only that, but the ups and downs happen to people around us, and then it happens to people around them, right? And so we, as a race, never get the peace that we want.
Okay, so I think I'm tracking you.
Right.
Hold on, real fast though. I got to ask a clarifying question.
Yeah, go on.
So what me and Katie had mentioned earlier was one theory, right? One hypothesis, and you kind of alluded to yours being a hypothesis. All right. It seems to me that it seems to me that the thing that you're positing, right? I could encompass that in my theory, right? There's nothing that like separates yours from saying like it has to have the God, because I could just posit the non-God world, and I don't see anything inconsistent or contradictory for everything you're saying being the state of affairs for the non-God world, right? So I don't know what your what is your theory doing?
Well,
how is it separating itself?
Yeah, what do we benefit from it?
Yeah, it should have some generated expectation or prediction or something like that. Otherwise,
no, that's
I don't.
No,
otherwise, the data can just be underdetermined, and that's not interesting, right? Because that just means that like it hasn't really done the work to separate itself as a viable theory.
Well, I think that if many people think about this in the way that they think about a good God and become the followers of a good God, they would look at their own lives and the lives of their grandparents and all the things happening around them and say, well, you know what? No one lives an unblemished life from, let's say, the bad things or evil things, right? And I'm not a theist at all. I don't believe in God. In fact, I refuse to believe this hypothesis myself, because I think it could be rather upsetting to believe that.
So then I don't. Well, yeah, but then I don't know. So then this just goes back to the whole point, right? Those then if you don't agree with it, then you agree that the data doesn't have some prediction in the future at which we could go, okay, that's some evidence of the claim. Yeah, then really just a waste of time to talk about it in a sense, right?
I guess you've called in here, Simon, to say is here is a possibility, and I agree, it is possible. I'm not making the strong claim that there definitely isn't a God. I mean, maybe I'm making the claim. Well, I'm making the strong claim that there definitely isn't an all-loving, all-powerful God because of the problem of evil, but I'm not making the claim there's definitely no some kind of God. So potentially there is, an evil God, or there's an evil God that created a good God, or there's some kind of Russian doll system of gods that created each other and varying levels. Yeah, maybe. And it's kind of interesting to have that discussion because, to point out to anyone who is arguing like, well, where did the universe come from then? Well, there's, we can posit like thousands, millions, infinite number of different weird possibilities. So yeah, that's a good discussion. But I think if you're not convinced by it, and neither of us two are convinced by it, that's kind of the situation we're in. All we can say is this is possible. There's no evidence for it. It doesn't explain anything. Cool.
No, but the interesting thing would be actually not whether I believe it or not, but whether another human being could believe it or not.
Sure,
I'm sure someone believes it.
Yeah, look at the domain of I'll get crap for this from people that like, I love philosophy, but look at the domain of metaphysics. Like, clearly you can construct arguments for really any type of metaphysical claim that you want. There's nothing that stops you from doing that.
Philosophers just say stuff, mate.
So
say what they want.
Well, and it's I'm not like even I'm not saying it's like we only should appeal to some in like empirical evidence only. I'm willing to accept any type of evidence for that, but the problem is like the initial thing had to do with a problem of logic, which assumes we all accept contradictions are a problem, and the way out of that is to go the God is not all good or it's not all powerful, which it's fine, but then we're just left in, is there any inherent contradiction to just a God with any set of properties? I don't see that. I don't see a contradiction. Otherwise, I would cite that on the show all the time. I'd be like, here's why God contradicts. It depends on the properties it has. If it has, for example, like, if it has certain properties, like the ones that I use would take time to go into or more of analysis, has like intentional states, but then it's also infallible. I find those properties to be contradictory. But that's not to say like every God is. Like you could do this all day long, and it's really just a post hoc or an ad hoc rationalization. So I don't know that that's a good way to look at it. But.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but of course I'm coming from a perspective of a huge, overwhelming belief in a good God, right? That is where I'm coming from. That is what really made me think in opposites. What's the opposite of a good God?
No God at all. I think it's a useful conversation to have with when you're surrounded by people who believe in an all-loving, all-powerful God, to point out the problem of evil and say, well, that doesn't really make sense. There's a contradiction here. We can just see it in the world, and that's a good discussion to have. I think, and maybe you've got a strategy of like, oh, maybe if I teach them that maybe God isn't all good, or maybe God isn't all powerful, then it might change their position, and then you can point out that contradicts their religious beliefs, and then they'll stop being religious and some kind of cascade over some time of thinking. Yeah, that's useful, but I think beyond that, it's just kind of like pub speculation, isn't it? Like, oh, what if there's an evil God? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I don't know, but I think we might move on now, Simon. So we've got lots of other callers in the queue. But yeah, thanks for the discussion. It is interesting to talk about different possible gods. So yeah, thanks, Simon.
Okay.
Bye.